I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Did I do it again? I did. There we go. It's haircut season and I am fighting it. Okay. All right. So, today's episode is on the dangers. And actually, it's not even necessarily the dangers. It's more of just the insight to what this concept of safe spaces does to us. Now, first off, what a safe space is. Safe spaces are not really new. They've been around since as far back as a written language. It's just they've been described differently over the years. Now, safe spaces are where you have the ability to express your opinion in a way that you don't feel threatened and you don't feel like you're going to have a whole lot of opposition. Ancient Greeks really weren't big fans of that. They liked the opportunity to debate, to actually express ideas, go over things individually. Not necessarily individually, but in a group so that they could share their ideas. The ancient Persians also had a very interesting approach to things too. And we kind of got away from this, but I actually like this one too. But you got to be careful with who you do it with. They would discuss a topic sober, whatever the topic would be, and they would get to a point where they feel like they well covered the topic. Then they would revisit the topic, but this time they would be under the influence of alcohol so that they could have another discussion about it and to see if their viewpoints changed at all. Now, the Greeks didn't really necessarily do that with that type of structural intention, but the ancient Persians did. I personally like both of them. I will have those kind of conversations, and I've had them actually on my other channel with Ethan Jordan and Stephen Wetter. We had a nice little conversation about 5 years ago that was that way, and it actually it turned into just back and forth, and we didn't have the conversation sober. We did it in the beginning sober and worked our way into having a nice buzz. I tell you all that stuff because discourse is fantastic. It's something that we should not avoid. If you really want to grow, there's going to be a lot of stuff that somebody else can see their point and share it in a way that it exposes a blind spot for you. But in modern days, we have concepts that really originated out of universities in the United States. I'm not exactly sure if they're in other countries, but I am familiar with the ones that we have in the United States to the extent that I can tell you that there's a great danger that lurks inside of these things. Now, what happens in a safe space, again, is where you can share whatever your ideas are in a way that they're not really challenged. Now, the problem with not having your ideas challenged is you may have an idea that really is not well thought out. And when I say well thought out, doesn't mean well thought out in your mind. It means that it's not well thought out in other people's minds. And if you don't have a way of actually having a conversation around that to kind of flesh it out, you can run some other issues, right? You can overly emotionally invest in the idea in such a way that you're not willing to allow that idea to be challenged. Challenge is not a bad thing. Exercise means that you're challenging your physique and your physical body enough that you are creating progress in a way that either you lose body fat or you build muscle or something changes physiologically. Could be also you increase your endurance. Those are wonderful and beautiful elements about change in a challenge. But when you have these groupings where you can't really share your ideas in a way that actually are promoting them and to be challenged, it's more of sharing them, waiting for opposition to attack the opposition. That's not debating. That is mob think, and or it's a kind of it's a lynching for communication. It doesn't even really communicate. It's waiting for somebody to come up with something that you don't agree with, and therefore you turn on them. I'm not saying that this is necessarily 100% accurate every single place you go to, but the general overview and my experiences of this have been pretty accurate to that degree. Okay, now with that being said, what happens in a safe space? Now, there are a few things that also come into this that what happens in universities is kind of like this experimental melting pot type of thing where they're running experiments in this fairly sterile environment, meaning that when you start reducing opposition to ideas, you're creating more of a sterile environment because the environment itself has been tampered with in a way that it cannot conflict with the scientific process of putting something out and testing it. Your hypothesis is not going to be fully challenged, and you may skip hypothesis, jump right into some sort of pseudo thesis, and you feel like you're well informed because people shook their head around you. There are other things that get introduced into this that kind of muck and muddy up the waters, things like, microaggressions and things like that. I'm not really going to go far into microaggressions on today's video. Just know that microaggression is something that is, like it said, just linguistically, a microaggression is something that is more of a subtle aggression, and it can be manipulated in such a way that people can dominate you by kind of talking and spinning you into circles with all of the aggressions that you've taken on them where you're just genuinely trying to communicate. So I'm going to stay away from that for now because that kind of is a topic in itself to dig into it is another time if somebody's interested in that. But so inside of safe spaces, one of the greater challenges that you run into, echo chambers. Echo chambers are something you want to avoid. I promise you, avoid echo chambers. They are not good things. They feel good in the moment, but they can create great worlds of challenge for you. Because an echo chamber is what, if the people that are watching, if they're familiar with what a sycophant is, that's what an echo chamber is. Sycophants are individuals that don't disagree with you. They agree with you to such an extent that you feel a false sense of confidence and support. And they very well may support you, but they're not supporting you by your idea necessarily, more so than the idea of you, not necessarily what you're putting out there. And if that can make the distinction on that, the idea of you is going to be how they feel about you, the way that they think of you, could very well be in part or in large to because of the way you told them that they should view you. And or it also blends in some of what they want from you. So the idea of you may be the ends, the means to an end for some other challenge in their life. It could be physically they want to, experience you sexually, or they may feel that being around you gets them more opportunities to have more friends, or, persuade people in a certain way, or, kind of, boosts up their own sense of value or worth. It doesn't necessarily mean that they give a darn about you as who you are at your deeper level. It just means that they care more about the idea of you. And I've gone into this in some of the love videos that I've made, and I absolutely will do more on those in the future as well. Okay, so sycophants and echo chambers are both dangerous elements to have around you. It's not a bad thing to have people that really believe in you. It's not a bad thing to have people that really support you. But you also might want to have people around you that tell you no, or that gives a conflicting viewpoint or idea. But we're getting so far into these echo chambers and safe spaces, or safe spaces in its own idea or generality. We're getting so far into them that we're finding that we're creating more tribal values. There's more people that are making in-group versus out-group distinctions simply by ideology, in a way that before it wasn't such a big deal. Like you could have somebody who that is a that structures the reality as a capitalist, and then you have somebody who structures their reality as a communist, and another that's a socialist. You can have those belief systems we could have had those belief systems at another time, and not had such a huge battlefront of ideas that. There's no communication. It's screaming and yelling and warfare. It's not communication. We at one point in time actually could have done that more easily than we could now. It's not as easy now because everyone's looking for their tribe, and their tribes are being found not just in the physical identities, but also their ideological structure. What political divide do you fall on? Which one is the curse word for the group? or you're Republican. And then the Democratic side of it, they're like, oh my God, they're the devil, they're the worst person ever. And then vice versa, the same whenever there's a group of Republicans and a Democrat steps in and says something that's very, liberal thinking or democratically structured or supported, and the right has their own idea and the left is communicating theirs. And before you know it, we're in these in-group, out-group situations, and now we're hating each other, we're disliking each other, we're creating reasons in our own mind to not want that person around us in a harmonious way. We may want to create some sort of struggle for them or some sort of frustration. So these are the dangers that come out of echo chambers, and the sycophants embolden us for these things. Because then it's like, oh no, this or that, and you create a dominant thinking process. We as a species can make great bounds of distance and discovery, not just in the tangible technology concepts, but also in the psychological element and the forward thinking and development of the brain, and also the way that we could live as a society. But instead we're sitting back going, I should fight with you about this, or I should fight with you about that, or it's the Republicans always do this and the Democrats always do that. There's other parties, by the way, just so you guys know. This particular episode is not about political parties as much as it is about the dangers of echo chambers. Both major party lines have echo chambers in them. It's the people that find themselves closer to the center seem to be the ones that are more open to talking to both sides. I am towards the center myself. I like both sides. I'm also not a party person. I am not a party line voter. I vote with consciousness, that kind of thing. But that's why I can also have this conversation with you in a way that I don't have one side's right or the other. It's topic based, and we have to consider what the better good over time and the short term is going to have what's going to come out of the conversation. And that's where we can have those kind of progressive types of conversations. And I don't mean progressive in the political sense. I mean in the actual greater scheme of things, progressing us forward. So with that, be careful. If you have people around you that never seem to disagree with you, question their motive. This is family. This is all kinds of people. It comes from all kinds of places. It may be a place of love. But are they doing you any favors if that place of love is continuously emboldening you into your ideology that isn't necessarily well practiced or tried, and then you go out into the public and you find out the world doesn't really agree with you, and you have not had enough conflict to have you revert back to considering the situation, but more revert back to anger and hostility, as if your idea is you. Again, Jordan Peterson is one of the people that I do find a great deal of value in his education and his insights. I'm not a 100% follower or anything like that. I'm actually not 100% follower of anything other than I'm devoted to my life and creating something more long-term beneficial and desirable for everybody. That I'm 100% behind. So Jordan Peterson said that, and this is also echoed by other psychologists, which he is a psychologist, is people don't have ideas, ideas have people. And one of the symptoms of people being possessed by an idea, the idea has them, is that when the idea is challenged, the person feels challenged. The idea has possession, not the individual. The idea is something that if you can't defend it, you may want to consider that there might be a problem with it. Doesn't mean abandon it. It means look deeper into your own ideology, or the idea itself, and to see if it makes better sense, or are you just purposely avoiding bridging the gaps because of the potential of cognitive dissonance. With that, please be aware. Echo chambers can set you up for failure. And it can set you up for pretty uncomfortable failures. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I read excessively, and I don't consider it excessively, but I've been told that. I read a lot because I love learning. I also pay attention to things in a different way than most people do. I don't overly invest myself emotionally in a lot of things immediately. I want more information before I actually throw emotion to it. Commonly, I'm not saying I'm completely impervious to it, but I'm watchful of myself in my mind as I go into situations. I'm not against what most people say. Okay, well, you're saying this, then I'm not that guy. It's going to be really hard to pin me down in that sense. I avoid straw man arguments, which are common as well. If your argument doesn't hold enough value, usually if somebody proposes a straw man argument, it will likely be coming from their own inability to navigate their position. For those that are watching or listening that aren't familiar with straw men is where somebody characterizes or exaggerates your position that you don't fully agree with. Now, you commonly also find straw manning with rapid fire statements or declarations and or questions that you are kind of going to be bogged down by, and simply because you don't answer all of it, therefore you somehow admit to those accusations that you didn't get a chance to respond to. You can see this in some of the debates if you watch any debates online or at any point in time in your life you've watched debates. Some people use that tactic. I find that tactic to be very deceitful and undesirable. I find it to also be extremely dishonest because it's layering to bury the other person, because the time that they would take them to reply may also take away from their time to freely reply of their own thinking that is outside of the structure of the questions offered by the other person. Because the other person puts a question out there. If you don't address it, you consent that it's true. If you do address it, you may not be able to share the ideas you had before that question was asked, and you also had something that you wanted to say, but your time is limited or the attention is also limited, or both. Now, straw manning is something that you do catch out of people that don't really have the strongest arguments, or there's areas that they need to try to redirect so that you don't get to it, or that they don't, or that you prevent them from being able to get to it. So, all right. Shorter story or shorter statement. So it's a long story short, right? Be careful whenever you're confiding in individuals that you really want genuine feedback. If that person has never pushed back or shared their opinion in a way that didn't always line up with yours, you may have somebody who is trying to echo you. And if they're echoing you, the fewer people that don't give you their opinion, you may very well be trapped in an echo chamber. Echo chambers typically feel good. It's one of the reasons why people create them. Actually, it's in my opinion, that is the reason why people create them, is because people aren't arguing with you. They're not disagreeing with you, and they don't challenge you in thinking. So your thinking continues that process down the path of your own interest without necessarily seeking out areas that are blind spots to you. So be aware of that. Okay. For the intensive purposes of this particular video and or episode, it depends on which way you're viewing this or listening, it pretty well covers it. Just be cautious. You get advice from somebody in a sycophant, if you get advice from a sycophant, or you get advice from somebody who is in that echo chamber, that safe space with you, there's a pretty good chance it's going to have a very limited functionality. And it may embolden you to step further into something that is not necessarily supported by the world. If I were to offer anything else in closing, and as I started mentioning earlier that I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, some of these events are like some of the events that we see, like the mass shooter, the school shooter at MIT, and there was another gentleman, really to call him a gentleman, he was a young adult that really had a maturity of a child. His name Elliot. He also committed an atrocious act against innocent people because he was what we refer to as an incel, involuntary celibate, which means that he really didn't have a lot of strong relationships with the opposite sex because he was interested in the opposite sex. He didn't really have a whole lot of people that he confided in a way that gave him worldview opinions and gave more individual, like a well-rounded worldview opinion. He gave more isolated world opinions, which reduced his, ability to clearly think through things and potentially increase his ability to connect with people, and then maybe he would have managed to have a lasting and developmentally sound relationship that would have led potentially to him not being celibate. The MIT shooter, he also seemed that, and from what I've known about him, but I'm not, again, I'm not creating a diagnosis or anything. What I'm saying is that these people can be examples of what happens when you are living so far into an echo chamber that you get kind of emboldened to the point of violence. It's not necessary. Communication is far more desirable. Take the easy path today could create greater frustration tomorrow. So join with me in this process. Let's break free of any of these echo chambers that we may be living in. We do not want to be in that overall long term. Even when discussing business opportunities, dating, you name it. Do you really want to date a copy of yourself, or somebody doesn't seem like they have their own backbone, or if they agree with you a little too much, are they kind of like trying to sway that opportunity in a way that you're like, oh yeah, you're good, let's do this thing. Clarity of communication and the freedom to be able to express conflicting viewpoints are far more desirable, in my opinion, and also from what I've seen in all the research. So, all right. I'm going to close it up for now. I've got another segment I'm going to do in just a minute that is on another subject that I'm going to have some fun with and kind of break this this consistent character. Or this is me, by the way. I commonly behave this way, but I also have a goofy side. I have all types of sides. I'm not like a uptight, walking around always needing to be proper kind of guy. I've got a lot in me and a lot of different behaviors that it's just situational. But the next topic's going to be one that I get a bit goofy with. Well, kind of. We'll see. All right, guys and girls. Thank you so much for your time. I'm not trying to create a safe space in myself either. I do ask that you are respectful enough that we can have communication and discourse of some sort. So if you have comments about these videos or this video in itself, please put it in the comments section. I'm always open to having a conversation with you as best that we can. I appreciate the ones that have been posting in the comments section as well. And some future videos are coming out now because of it. So with that, share this video with the person in your life you know that this can help. I'm not out to create an argument for them. I just want to be able to open up my own perspectives as well as possibly theirs. So maybe there's an echo chamber I'm unaware of that maybe VIP access would be awesome in, but I don't think so. But I am open to changing my mind if the evidence proves that I should. So with that, like the channel, like the video, subscribe to it, hit the bell notification on the options and platforms that have it, so you know when we're going live. You can jump into the chat, and you can play with me through the chat or in the comment section. Thank you so much for your time. Again, this is Chad Everett Brochures. This is Growing Up in the Wilds, and this is my episode on safe spaces to echo chambers, supported by sycophants. By the way, the other piece of that was I did mention pseudo-arguments in it. I just didn't call it by the term. That's where you get bolstered and emboldened by the idea of an argument without having the other side present to actually make it one. It's kind of just a role play kind of thing, if you will, but there really isn't a role to be played on the other side. Those are pseudo-arguments. It means the other person's not there with the opposing idea or an idea that can challenge it. So, okay. Got to add more content there at the end. That's the cliffhanger, like some of the movies in the past couple of years where you have to wait till the credits have rolled. And with the credit rolling statement, let's get them rolling. All right, guys and gals, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy until next time. Think critically, and we're in this together. Let's get developmentally sound. All right.